But now with that, like the generative art, we can do that iteration like real time, and it's much more efficient, and it's really helpful to bring everyone on the same page because we know visually, yes, this is what I'm describing, and yes, this is what I envisioned. So I think all it did was kind of raise the floor. There's a lot of okay work that can be produced without much experience and effort, but you have to be really good at what you are doing. It's really your companion. Like it could be providing you a second opinion, additional set of eyes, or like ideas, but it's on you at the end of the day. But the real best engineers, they come up with their own tool, they innovate their own tool, or they suggest something else to be incorporated in the work process.
Welcome back to the CPA Intelligence and Ethics show. I'm your host, Garth Sheriff. This is the podcast. We explore how AI is transforming the accounting profession and how CPAs can lead with purpose, ethics, and intelligence. Today's episode is one I'm very excited to share with you. It was recorded live at Web Summit in Vancouver, one of the world's largest gatherings of technologists, innovators, and thinkers. And among the AI buzz and echoing throughout the halls of the summit and the convention center, we sat down with someone who's been living this AI transformation for decades, long before it became a headline. My guest is the prestigious, unbelievably accomplished Dr. Songyee Yoon, a pioneering executive, technologist, investor, and thought leader whose career spans electrical engineering, neuroscience, law, and venture capital. She is a graduate of the prestigious Korean Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, a PhD in computational neuroscience from MIT, and a Juris Doctor from Santa Clara University School of Law. From founding AI labs during the early days of mobile networks to serving as a member of South Korea's Presidential Advisory Council for Science and Technology, Songyee has led from the front as AI evolved from academic research to a force now shaping creative industries, public discourse, and the knowledge economy in which CPAs belong. In our conversation, Songyee reflects on the early AI winters when researchers actively avoided the term artificial intelligence because of broken promises and hype fatigue. And she contrasts that with today's explosion of tools like ChatGPT and generative art platforms. She brings a valuable reminder that real innovation isn't driven by buzzwords, but by purpose, patience, and interdisciplinary thinking. These are characteristics that CPAs have inside of them and bring to the table in our profession. We also talk about what AI means for professionals like us, CPAs. Songyee shares her view that AI is best understood as a collaborator, one that boosts efficiency by taking on repetitive tasks, but still relies on human expertise to validate, interpret, and apply results. You'll hear her describe how this plays out in industries like gaming, where AI-generated concept art supports rather than replaces the creative process, and how that same principle applies to the judgment CPAs bring to the vast amount of services we provide. So whether you're excited about AI, skeptical of the hype, or simply trying to keep up, this conversation with Dr. Songyee Yoon offers something for every future-minded professional. It's a deep, thoughtful, and practical look at how to lead in a world where technology is moving fast and judgment matters more than ever. Let's dive in. Really excited to have Songyee Yoon here, managing partner, principal venture partners at a VC firm that backs AI native companies, 20-year career, which is, I was looking at everything that you've done. I'm using the very short synopsis of your career, but unbelievable career, including at MIT and what you've done, just amazing. But includes gaming. You are the NCSoft president and member of South Korea's Presidential Advisory Council for Science and Technology, and much, much more. You're a leader in the space. You've been working, especially in the cognitive space, as one of the leaders coming out of MIT for a number of years. And we're really excited to talk to you for our podcast, the CPA Intelligence and Ethics show. A lot of our focus is just where things are going. I know we can go very specific to what you're doing right now, but maybe we'll start off a little bit bigger picture and then come into what you're doing. You've worked at the cutting edge of AI innovation and venture capital investing. As you see the development in AI from your perspective, and we're looking at this show for professionals such as CPAs and lawyers who are somewhat skeptical just by nature of the profession. What are your feelings right now as we sit here talking about here at Web Summit with AI? What are your feelings about how things have been moving since when you entered the space to now in terms of AI?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the introduction and thank you for having me today. It's a real pleasure. I mean, I think for me, I think it's a really a fascinating time because I've been in this space for decades, and probably those who have been around for long enough remember that they had to go through multiple AI winters and summers. So there is a period, there's a lot of hope built up for this technology, and there's a lot of like massive disappointment. People did not want to be associated with the word AI. They denied that they're working on AI. They asked me to call them, like saying not they're working on AI, but like, oh, I'm doing factory automation, I'm doing like a machine vision, I'm doing something else other than AI because it's just such a disappointing word. But it's fascinating that now that it seems like that AI landed in the hands of a lot of people, and people, it kind of sparked imagination, and people talk a lot about where this technology is headed, like what this magical thing is gonna completely transform our society, but that there's a lot of noise and hype around it. I think what has not changed over the last decades is that the world has been more softwareized. There's a lot of software automation that's taking up our work and making it more efficient. And I think that's going to continue. And that's going to continue with the advancement of sophisticated algorithms, optimization, use of a big data, etc. We can call like it's AI, but like that's a kind of a underlying current that's not changing. And a lot of the because a lot of people are now very interested in the technology they're using because it's like fascinating. It's kind of clouded with so much noise.
Yeah, really interesting that you said, and I wonder when this was in your career when AI was maybe a bad word in describing what you did. Is that at the beginning of your career and your education, or is it? Would you say that's currently the case? Where
Like
is that?
multiple times. Yeah,
Really?
multiple
Okay.
times. Yeah. So, like, for example, I was working at a big wireless carrier. I really do not want to date myself, but like, I was working on 3G rollout. Like, now we're
3G.
talking about 5G, like
Right.
3G. It's an interesting time because it was the first time people talk about, oh, what's going to happen if we can watch a movie on our phone? What happens if we can listen to music? And it was very clear to a lot of people that now those all the content is delivered direct to your personal device. Personalized delivery is going to be important, right? Personalized delivery requires understanding your interest, understanding your context, and curate the content so that you will be satisfied with it. That's a kind of prime example where artificial intelligence algorithm can be applied. So I wanted to set up a team of AI major who can work on algorithm that like personalized content delivery, algorithm development. I went around all the top universities and asked the faculty members, I want your like best AI student. And then they said, oh, I'm not doing AI. I'm doing machine vision. I'm not doing AI. I'm doing robotics. And all those people today are saying, oh, I've been doing AI. Because, I mean, it was hard to get the grant on research approved if you say you're doing AI because it generated so much hype since it was first introduced to the community that it was associated with a lot of disappointment because it was not able to deliver that kind of promise and the vision. Because it takes a lot of, I mean, it's not just the algorithm, it's just idea, but like the processors, compute, data, like investment that all have to go in to implement what's going to work. But that was massively lacking back then. So they said, yeah, I'm not doing AI, I'm doing this and that. So I said, it's okay that as long as they understand software,
Right.
understand algorithms, then we can work with them. So that's how I built AI Lab with those people who understood how to develop algorithms.
I mean, you're an amazing leader to collect those individuals to do that. It's just interesting. What year was that? Where
It was
when
like
you went to go recruit and people were like, no, I don't do AI.
like 2005.
2005, because
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
if I look even here at Web Summit, I mean, we're
20
throwing
years
out AI all over the place. If
Yeah,
I
yeah.
look at the speakers, the presenters, it's AI this, AI that.
Yeah.
So we've come to a place where we're using that term maybe a little bit more freely. You mentioned, and I'd like to know just also inside, the companies that you've worked, but also maybe more existentially, you mentioned the efficiency part, like you see the space in which these tools, these developments can be used in the efficiency side, and that's I think the side that we look at positively. What does that mean to you when you think about it as an efficiency side? Is it taking away tasks that are repetitive? Is it helping us think through problems faster? What does that mean to you with
Yeah,
efficiency?
I think it's mostly like kind of taking over repetitive tasks. Like I know like exactly what I'm gonna do, then I can just charge my assistant or AI with that task so that I don't have to spend my time doing it, but it's gonna deliver the result exactly what I have expected or exactly what I would have gotten.
With NCSoft and other companies that you've worked or helped fund, talking about that inside, have you seen that inside the companies that you've worked where AI has been deployed, where you
Oh.
feel like that there's an efficiency gain or the work is improved by any deployment?
Of course, yeah. So like one part of the game development process is coming up with concept art.
Right.
It's like as you start game development, you think about what's kind of the background in what era that we are going to develop this narrative. And it's a combination of what happens,
Right.
also like kind of visual of that world. So what happens is that we kind of get around in the meeting and we talk about it, and there is a concept artist who kind of downloads all the ideas and go away and come back in a couple of weeks with that concept art.
Right.
And we look at it together. Oh, yeah, this is what we discussed. Or, oh, this is very different from what I envisioned. But iteration takes, 2 to 3 weeks.
Right.
If it have to rely on like a human artist doing 100% of the work.
Right.
But now with that, like the generative art, we can do the iteration like real time, and it's much more efficient, and it's really helpful to bring everyone on the same page because we know visually, yes, this is what I'm describing, and yes, this is what I envisioned.
I like this side of this. I think we will start a positive and we'll bring in some of the challenges because I think a lot of questions when it comes to, let's say in gaming with your company, is the question between helping the creative process, helping set up the visual tableau for the game or the setting, but where is there sort of this relationship, or is there a delegation of that creativity to some generative creator of art? And it sounds more like it's a collaboration, that there's still that human component, like human creativity, and there's just a faster process to get to the end result. Is that how I understand
Sure.
it?
Yeah, like at the end of the day, it's a human, like it's executive management has to be responsible for the performance of the game that when it goes into the world. So it has to be approved that this is a kind of visual that we'd like to stay behind. This is a kind of the image that we're going to portray, and this is the kind of content that we're going to populate. And I think that the human has to approve what was generated regardless of what tool was used
Right.
to get there.
Yeah, I did mention before in our pre-interview that we listened to Gary Marcus speak. He has a little bit more negative view, but I think it was more just sort of globally around where maybe generative AI is and where it has some challenges. One of the questions I have when you're working with a team and deploying a tool like that at NCSoft for gaming, for example, we use that example. Like, how do the artists feel about it? Do they feel like this is helping their ability to be imaginative, speeding the process, or is it encroaching on some of the things that is my creativity? Do you see that? Is that a discussion that comes up?
Yeah, I think I mentioned the 3G era, right?
3G era. I do remember that era
right,
myself.
the 3G era, right? It was fascinating. And there was a thing called pixel artist. I don't know whether you remember.
I do remember
Right?
pixel artists. Yeah.
Have to kind of put pixels,
Yes.
every pixel, to make sure that it kind of shows up on your
I
very
might have even
clumsy
tried that amateur
exactly
Pixar for
clumsy
myself.
screen, but they have like beautiful ideas and
Right.
vision of what they want to do, but like it's an iterative process, right?
Right.
So to see it on a screen, it takes so much time because you have to produce like pixel by pixel, right? Now there are tools that
Right.
can convert your idea into the pixel art. It can just people do not miss that work.
Right.
Right.
So it is really taking something that was very repetitive and,
yeah,
maybe labor intensive and allowing, from your experience, the creative person or whoever it might be to do more of that creativity and maybe less some of the repetitive work. Because you've been working in this space for a while. And what do you feel has like really changed since when you entered the space and we didn't have these large language models sort of in the mainstream? How has large language models, the advent of, let's say, OpenAI's ChatGPT and others that have followed, how have they changed the landscape from how you entered this space in artificial intelligence and problem solving?
I mean, also, like at the same time, a large language model is just one category of AI. A lot of people use it as a synonym to
Right.
AI because that's the only thing they had exposure of. But if you think about your brain, generative part is like kind of fraction of what your brain does. There are a lot of other things that your brain does, like empathy, perception, like
Yeah.
cognition, and like planning. So there are a lot of other AI tools that can be developed if you think about how the whole human brain works. Generative AI is a fascinating tool because it does certain things very well, and it does help with the efficiency and the production. And my experience, artists want to use more of those tools. That their frustration was the tool was not good enough
Right.
because a lot of the tools were developed without understanding what the artists have to go through and their kind of their creative process. And if there's a tool that really understands and augment the process, they really appreciate it. And also, like, what it does is that now that's the kind of the bar, because then everyone, there's a difference between artists who can use a tool and who cannot use a tool.
Right.
And of course, those who can use the tool will be more efficient and productive.
Interesting.
And then, like, you have to have a bar and your aesthetics to tell whether the art that was produced by this tool is good or bad.
Right.
You can, right? And so that you can kind of make it so that it can produce a really kind of the art that resonates with our target audience. So I think all it did was kind of raise the floor so that there's a lot of like okay work that can be produced without much experience and effort.
Right.
But you have to be really good at what you are doing to bring it to the next level.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting perspective. And that's sort of why we're doing this podcast, to explore that very notion, is that, you can come to a point. And I think the reason that a lot of us that are outside, because you have deep knowledge, I can't tell you, I've understated your biography, how amazing it is. You have extreme deep knowledge, and not only just AI, but neuroscience as well. I think the large language model has been made available for the general public, right? The people who don't have your background, right? And including CPAs and lawyers and engineers. And now they get to play around with this tool without having your idea of and your history with development. When it comes to large language models, your understanding of them and how they operate and what they can and can't do and what they should and should not be used for is not necessarily the same as those that are end users of Claude or ChatGPT or whatever it might be. And so that's why we're getting your perspective. Because I think that's some of the challenge, that idea that maybe it can help. For example, you work with the artists, you want their work to be elevated by the space. And for CPAs and lawyers, it's maybe to have a different point of view, maybe to get some information, but not to hand off certain parts of really their responsibility. And where is that line, though? Where do you see that place where that elevation of the artist using these tools? Because that line is hard to define.
No, I think it's already happening. I think I also invest in a lot of the companies that also help with like accountants, lawyers, because that's also area that can be innovated a lot. And with this technology, it's really your companion. Like it could be providing you a kind of second opinion, additional set of eyes, or like ideas. But it's on you at the end of the day. They're like whether you are going to incorporate in your report and your recommendation that's just something that we have to look into.
And so why don't we take NCSoft and your example, and maybe I'll have a couple more questions. I can continue talking with you because you have so much knowledge. And because I want to use it as a parable, right? Do you give sort of the context to how your artists should be using, for example, the art generation tools? Or do you trust them to know where that line is? Do you give them some training, some ideas of where this is a good use, this good collaboration with the whatever it might be, the generative AI art creator, whatever it might be? Or do you trust them to say they know where they need to now be part of the process as the human artist?
I think it's a both, right? It's like any other tool. When the company adopts the tool, there is introduction of it, what's the good use of it, etc. But the real best engineers, they come up with their own tool, they innovate their own tool, or they suggest something else to be incorporated in the work process, and then we review it together. So like any other process, it's also very collaborative, right? It's not just kind of one-sided. This is something that you have to use. It's always creative process, collaborative process that both sides has to be open-minded.
I'll leave this last question for you. And I know we've been talking about your the artist and the space that you're working with NCSoft. If you were to talk to, let's say, a CPA, an accountant, a lawyer, who don't have your background, that are starting to like see these tools, and there's like two parts of them, like, no, I'm never going to use these tools, they're bad, or someone who's maybe younger going, I'm going to use these tools a lot. What would you say is a good insight, given your experience with NCSoft and working with these tools? What would be a good way to look at this so they use these tools in the way you're describing that you see your employees use these tools?
So there are many ways to go about it. So I've been saying this for many years, that the most important, we all learned our second language. We're in like middle school and high school. The most important second language of our time is a machine language. We'll be interacting with more software, more machine than the humans. So we have to understand how it thinks and interacts and speak. So I recommend everyone to learn programming language.
Interesting.
That's one thing. And the other is, as I said, the use of this technology has impact of like raising the floor. Everyone can do certain kind of work with certain quality. It's even more important to have a like deep knowledge and understanding your kind of expertise in your own domain to tell good work versus bad work.
Wow. Okay.
So that you can curate good outcome from these tools so that you can produce even better synthesis. So I think that's going to be also important.
No, that's fantastic. It's really, I think, a powerful message to our listeners, and something actually I'm going to take myself. Maybe off camera, I'll ask you what language I should learn. I've been a boy. I went to a university, Waterloo, where I had to learn a language, touring, I think, but way back, and I struggled with it. But Songyee, I want to say thank you for taking the time to talk to us. It was a real pleasure to have someone with your insight, your experience, and your knowledge just share what's happening in the space and your thoughts around it for our audience. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me for this powerful and thought-provoking conversation with Dr. Songyee Yoon, recorded live at Web Summit in Vancouver. She was just amazing, energetic, just full of ideas and thoughts, given her experience and history with AI, her education. It was just an honor to sit down and talk to her and then share that conversation with you. Her insights today gave us a rare behind-the-scenes look into the evolution of AI, from the early AI winters where researchers avoided even using the term, it's hard to believe, to today's era of generative tools transforming industries in real time. Songyee reminded us what it seems like an overnight process of AI just dropping on the scene is actually the result of decades of vision, failure, persistence, and reinvention. What stood out to me was her perspective on how AI raises the floor, but demands even greater human judgment at the top. Whether it's generative art in gaming or large language models used by professionals, the technology may accelerate tasks, but it's up to us to shape the output, bring context, and stay responsible for the final decisions. Her comments on the importance of machine language as the essential second language of our time were especially resonant to me. For CPAs, lawyers, and other professionals, that means not just using AI tools, but understanding their mechanics, their limits, and their implications. This episode was a call to action for me, and hopefully to you as well, not to resist technology and not to just embrace it without thinking, but to approach it with curiosity, critical thinking, and the courage to lead, all skill sets and characteristics that a CPA has. Be sure to follow, rate, and share the podcast with a fellow CPA or future-focused professional. I'm Garth Sheriff, and remember, as AI reshapes our profession, it's up to us as CPAs to lead with insight, integrity, and the courage to ask the hard questions. Thank you for listening.